790 to that bank. See, I can laser beam you guys. Woo! Is it going or what?
Is that on?
I think so.
Are we in frame?
Yeah, pull up a little farther.
Are we zoomed in?
You look like a tiny person. Oh, there you are. No, I'm way up. I'm in front of you. Howdy guys, Rex here.
And Lou.
So we're going to do a review today on a very interesting piece of peripheral equipment. It is made by SilencerCo.
The Radius.
The Radius, yeah, that's a cool name. It looks like a goofy pair of binoculars that you attach to your rifle like this, and it's got laser beams on it, and it's got digital readouts. See, I can laser beam you guys. Woo! And you got these like blinking numbers in the back right here. It's actually like a really heavy rifle. It's kind of hard to do that. But what is up with this critter anyways? You know, I've seen him maybe at a glancing just walk through of the magazine rack at the gas station, and they had them rifle magazines and stuff, and they showed one of these outfits, and I thought, huh, they're making a lot of newfangled crazy equipment nowadays, right, Lou?
This is pretty cutting edge. How long have they had these out?
I don't know.
It's pretty new.
That's a mystery. But I know I was looking for a rangefinder, okay? So I was poking around on some of the different scope buy-in sites and whatnot, and then I was looking on Optics Planet, and I found this deal, and I'm like, that looks crazy. What is it? And I looked at it, and it says average, or what do you call it, the effective range is like 1,760 yards. It's a mile, right? And then it says max range 3,500 yards, and I'm like, huh.
Better check that out.
And it attaches to your rifle, and you use the rifle scope as the aiming point for this, which I also like, because you know how it is with them handheld rangefinders, like
You're all over the place.
yeah, you don't got a decent magnification, so you can't see exactly what you're pointing at, and if you can, you only got 7 power, and your crosshair is like giving you like a 30-foot wide window of stuff you could possibly be hitting.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you get a more decent one, it's problematic at best. And you're never totally sure that what you're aiming at is what you're getting, unless you got like an obvious backdrop, like a riverbank or a big obvious hill or like a building, you know, or an automobile or something, even like, especially if you got an animal out in the field, you know, whatever kind of large mammal you're shooting at. If you wiggle, you know, even 1 inch above its back, that could potentially be 1,000 yards or 500 yards behind that critter. So you're thinking, oh man, how far is this thing? And it's 800, and you hit the hill behind it. Oh, it's actually, you know, and it gives you a reading of 12. You're going to hit way high. Sometimes in rough terrain, it's difficult to be able to verify those things. People do trust their rangefinders beyond, but you got to hit what you're aiming at.
Yep.
And so this deal, you basically attach it to your rifle via Picatinny rail, and you adjust it, and we'll tell you how to do that in a minute. I got some cool video of us adjusting it to where you are parallel with the line of sight, because you're using the scope as the aiming point. So you just want it parallel. So you want to, there's a laser beam on here, the laser beam I showed you guys, see? Remember that part? I want to do it again. That laser beam is for zeroing this rangefinder so you know where it's pointed. And then you hold it on a piece of paper, and they include that in the kit.
Comes with that, doesn't it?
Yep, it does, yep. And there's 2 reflectors on there that they give you for tape, and it explains what that's for. But the tape will kind of show you if you're getting on target or not. If you hit that in broad daylight, sometimes it's hard, especially without a decent scope if you got like a smaller scope. This scope, you can see it pretty easily, running a 6-30 primary arms decamil platinum on here, so you could see it pretty easily. But, you know, the tape will definitely shine real bright if the laser beam's anywhere near it. And so you put the crosshairs of your optic right on the center of that piece of paper, and then there are adjustments on here, kind of like an external adjustment on an LCAN scope. You got an adjustment wheel here, and you got an adjustment knob here on the bottom, right here, and you can turn those so you have up and left, you know, up and down, left and right kind of adjustments. And you simply look through your scope, and what you're going to do is you're going to measure the distance from the center of your line of sight to the center of the laser beam on this unit. And then you're going to offset it that much in that direction on your piece of paper and make a little mark. And then you're going to see how much farther down the center of your optic is with the center of the laser beam. So that when you have your piece of paper drawn up, you're going to have where the crosshairs is, and then how many inches down and left this unit sits. Now it's super important if you want to get a parallel sighting. Now it's important if you think about it, right? If I was just to put the crosshairs on with the laser at 100 yards, at 100 yards I'm good. At 200 it's going to be 2.5 inches up and to the right or whatever, right? Because it's going to cross it. And then at 1,000 it's going to be way the heck up and to the right. Because you want it to be parallel, right? And it's relatively close, you know, for ranging anything that's this big. It's not going to be an issue. But you're always going to be offset the exact same at that point. If you truly get a parallel, you can go at infinity yards or whatever. If the laser, as far as the laser will go, you always will be hitting exactly 2 inches low or 2.5 inches low and 2.5 inches left with the laser. And that's how this one turned out to be, is 2.5 by 2.5 inches down and left in my case. Now there's different mounting options.
So it's really important to get that measured right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got to get measured exactly right. And if you're off by 1 degree is 60 minutes of angle, okay? That's a lot. That's like a huge amount. So
especially when you get out there a ways.
So when you're doing this, they say in the instructions, they recommend 20 yards to 100 yards to do this. I would say start at 20, get it kind of close, and then go back as far as you can see it. The farther back you can go and still see it, and then get a parallel, the closer you're going to be. And when you're taking your measurements, be very cognizant of exactly where your head is positioned, so that you actually got a center measurement on the center of the scope and a center measurement on the center of the laser beam of this device. Because if you don't got that right, you're going to be way tweaked off. So spend some time doing those measurements right. If you're off even a tiny amount, it's going to be exacerbated at long range, and that's potentially going to throw you way the heck off.
Yes, sir.
So that's super important to know is during setup.
But when you're mounting this, you said yours is down and to the left. The instruction manual is down and to the right.
Yep.
This thing is pretty versatile. You can put it just about anywhere.
You can mount it anywhere. You can go. The manual recommends doing it either on the sides. I got it on the left side on this big old rifle. By the way, this is a special purpose rifle I built up. This is the 7mm-300 that was built by Paul McCoy. This is kind of a rifle intended for use at extreme long range, and so having a weapons mounted laser rangefinder is going to be very advantageous for a setup like this, where I need to really verify my range, and it has to be right. You know, at extreme long ranges, your area of forgiveness to get your distance wrong narrows a lot, and you have to really get it on sight. If you misjudge your distance even by 30 yards at ultra long range, you're going to miss over the top or below. And so it's they call that danger space. We did a whole series of videos explaining all that. And so it's very important that you get precise as you can with your laser. And making sure you're aiming at the actual target's very important. That's why I like using the rifle scope to do that, if you get a true parallel measurement. And it's nice that you can verify it on the paper. But it allows you to mount it on either one side, or you can put it on the other side, or you can mount it up on top. Some guys have the mounting equipment that attaches to the ring, and a lot of guys put it up here. Now, this particular rifle setup is already very high in this direction because it's equipped with the Mirage ULR chassis, where I put the buttstock really high and the rings really high, so that the center of the bore line is centered on my shoulder, and the axis of recoil goes straight back so that there's no muzzle flip. So this gun recoils as much as a pellet rifle, but you're pushing a 195 Berger at like almost 3,000 feet a second. Ow. So it's a super magnum, but it doesn't recoil up. So in that configuration, it was already kind of high. I didn't want to mount it up on top, which would probably be smartest just geometrically, because then you don't got to worry about your left and right component. You're just a little bit higher, you know what I mean? True. And so that would probably be the best option. But for me, it was already too tall, so I put on the side. And I also, during the review, wanted the experience of struggling to mount it in that way, because it's going to be another whole, you know, you got the x-axis and the y-axis. I wanted both, so you guys can see how it works.
And then if you flip it over and you put it on the other side of the rifle, the readout on there, it's backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, so you got a little readout here. So if you take a look here, we got the readout, and we have some buttons that are controls. This is your on and off switch. If I hold it in, it turns off. If I hold it in, it turns back on, okay? And if I want to take a reading, I just hit that and it'll come up with the reading. Now we're too close, we're indoors, it ain't gonna work. Minimum reading's like 20 yards, right? But then we have these two buttons. These are your display brightness, bright, dim, okay? And then you have laser beam. See the laser beam? Okay, so we killed the laser beam. And then we have this, which is meters or yards. So if I click this button, now it went to yards, went to meters. You can see it, a M or a Y there changing, see? And I like meters, so I'm leaving it there. You also have a battery indicator and whatnot. So you got this display, right? Now if I was to change this to turn this way and sit on top of the rifle scope, it's going to be goofy. But this thing allows you to reposition this. Now what I found out in the field was you have to turn this unit off if you're going to unplug it and plug it back in, because I think I confused the computer. For a while I thought I broke it, because I took this off and I put it back on, it turned on, and I could not do anything. I could not turn it off. I could not get a range estimate. I couldn't change the yards and meters. It was jammed up, and I thought, what? This thing sucks, you know? And so I ended up pulling the batteries out. I put the batteries back in, it reset. So I'm going to turn this off. Okay. You know them little screws you got on the back of your computer for the big plugs? You know what I'm talking about, Lou?
Same thing there, huh?
Yeah, same idea.
That's pretty brilliant the way they designed it, actually.
And you got a very similar design plug. So I'm going to pull that off. And I can see the little connections there. And you can see here. Now you see how there's two little rectangular deals?
You gotta line those up, I'm pretty sure.
Well, that's what it would seem like, right? Because they're different. And so you got them here too. And I'm like, well, how, if you turn it, it's like now misoriented. Because I like to have these two match up with these two, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when you turn it, it doesn't mind. So now we're going to turn it sideways, right? Let's put it on sideways one time. And it just plugs straight in like normal. And I don't need to tighten it down, but see, it still works. It figures it out, man.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? And you can turn it any way you want. So this is easy to reorient this unit. And I'm going to put it like this, because that's the way it's up and down for here. So it's neat how they got it wired. It's good for any direction, and it figures out what you're trying to accomplish.
That is versatile.
Yeah, pretty cool. So that's the displays, and that's how to operate the unit, basically. Now there's a continuous ranging mode. If you double tap, I think is this button here when you turn it on. When you're out there, one of these buttons you double tap. I'll put it in the review there. But if you read the instructions, it'll give you the continuous ranging. So whatever you're pointing at, it'll spit it out at you. And this has 16 hours of battery life, I believe. And we'll go over the specs here in a minute too, so that we can read those off to people. But one thing I found when we were mounting this critter, man, it was a little bit tricky. Can I tell you about this?
With the rail mount or what?
Well, yeah, so you got external mounts, and I'm going to pull this off so I can show them. Okay, I want to hold this thing. Sure.
Boy, that is heavy. You were holding this the whole time?
It's stout.
Boy.
So you got externally adjustable deals. You got a thing to turn here, and then you got a wheel up front here. See that wheel? You spin that. You can see the edge of it there. So you spin this wheel. And that'll give you your adjustment so you can adjust it. So I had this mounted. The mount is plenty solid. And what I found out was I'd get it just perfect on the paper the way I wanted it. And I'm like, yeah, I got it parallel. And then I go and hit the laser to range it. And then I noticed it was off on the paper. And I thought, what the heck's up with that deal? That's weird, you know?
A little bit.
Yeah, it was off by like 1/2 mil. Because I'm looking through the scope and I can tell. And I'm like, huh. And so I would readjust it, and then I'd hit the button again, and then I was on, and then I'd go in and move something, and I'd be hitting the display button, and then I'd look, and it was like a full mil off. So I'm like, this thing ain't like attaching, or what's its story? It's like not solidly mounted. I thought maybe an internal component was moving, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what was happening was external mounts like this require a little bit of time to get seated. And so what you got to do is you got to wiggle it into place. And so I found myself, the way I mitigated that problem was I'm laying behind the rifle and I'm reaching up with my left arm and I'm wiggling the heck out of it. And then I keep the laser on the whole time, and I watch that laser, and it's kind of slipping up. And I'm like, okay, it's still got spring tension in there. And see, wiggle it, and I'm wiggling it this way. I'm wiggling it this way. And I'm tapping on it like this, trying to get it to settle in. And then after a certain amount of time, it probably took a good 5 or 10 minutes to work all the bugs out of it. It seemed like it settled into right in that zone where it needed to be, 2.5 inches down, 2.5 inches left. And the way you position that paper is you have a little dot, a reflective dot, that you stick to the paper that comes included with this. And you stick that on there so that when your crosshairs are on there and you're on target, that dot just illuminates and glows really bright. And so I found that it wasn't exactly quite perfect the whole time. And but after messing with it, and you really, really, really do want to make sure you get the wiggle out of it. So you got to give it some twists, and it'll move around quite a bit. And you got to readjust it and then wiggle it. Anytime you turn these dials, make sure you wiggle it a bunch until you end up in the middle of that zone. So that's the one thing you want to be very careful of, is this thing will shift, and you want to make sure that it's good, because it will wiggle when you got any kind of pressure on it. It'll wiggle up to like 1 mil or 1.5 mils off. And 1.5 mils at 1,000 meters is going to be like 1.5 meters, right? So that's a huge amount. That's going to cause you to miss like a large mammal. You'll shoot over the back or shoot underneath it or get a wrong reading. So you want to be advised on that when you're touching this thing, it's going to throw it off. Now, like I said before, if you get the wiggle out of it, when you're touching it, it's fine. You know what I mean? But one of the nice features this thing has is an actual switch. And there's a little plug on here that you plug it into. A little jack, like a headphone jack. And they got a cord. And then you can use a little Velcro sticky pad, and you can position that switch down back. I would put it back by the pistol grip. And then that way you're not touching the unit at all. You're touching that remote switch, in which case this sucker don't wiggle, then it's very reliable. So I'd strongly recommend using the remote switch for the reliable operation of this without throwing it off.
Yes, sir. And
anytime you attach it and reattachment, it should, if you get the proper bugs worked out of there by wiggling, like I said earlier, you shouldn't have problems with it being on. Now, if you just turn it until it's on the first time and then think it's good, you're going to come back and it's going to be like 5 mils off. You know what I mean? Because the stuff settles. This spring-loaded, resistance in here. And you can see the little springs in there, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
See them little springs in there? I don't know if you guys can see that.
So it's got to get seated in there.
Yeah, so it's got to get fully seated. And it's got to have the proper amount of tension. It's got to find its equilibrium point. So if you get it adjusted right and everything's parallel, I'd recommend going back as far as you can, like we said before, with the paper, the side-end paper. And the farther out you go, the more accurate you're going to be, and the more likely it's going to be parallel. So you got the specs there, Lou. Let's go ahead and read off the specs.
The key features.
And then I'll give my commentary after you're done, or as we're going.
So it says general range is 20 yards to 1760.
That's a mile is what it's advertising.
Is at dusk or dawn with reflective target.
Okay, that's a very important detail. At dusk or dawn with the reflective target. That means a low light environment where the target is highly reflective. Okay? And we'll show you how our test results came out in a minute.
It's got a maximum range of 3,200 yards.
Yeah, maybe on a mirror or something, I don't know.
A beam divergence of a half of MRAD by 1.85 MRADs.
Okay.
Continuous ranging for up to 12 hours. Operational temperature range of -20 Fahrenheit up to 120 Fahrenheit. Durable and high impact resistant housing.
That's something I can attest to. I was throwing it around pretty good, and it's built like a tank. And I'm pretty hard on equipment, and I was getting Western, pulling it in and out of the truck, and in and out of that, when I got it in a Voodoo tactical drag bag, and I'm pulling on it, snagging on stuff, and I'm just like, I get pretty rough with it.
And it's compatible with all Picatinny mill standard 1913 rails.
Mm-hmm.
Waterproof waterproof IP67 rating.
Yep, so it's actually, you can get it wet, so this is made for field operations.
User configurable display orientation.
We went over that, yep.
I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty neat, yep.
Then 3 range readings, your primary, which is the strongest, and 2 secondary readers.
Now that's important, and if you guys haven't seen the Sniper 101 tutorials where I talk about laser rangefinders, it's very important that you understand the concept there. A lot of people depend on laser rangefinders because, it's accurate within plus or minus 1 yard or 2 inches or whatever it's advertised as. That's only if you hit it. There's a lot of stuff that happens with lasers, atmospheric conditions, reflectivity issues, mirage. There's a lot of weird stuff that'll totally either render your laser rangefinder inoperable in those conditions. It won't pick up a reading, or it will distort where you're hitting and throw you off a faulty reading. So you really have to understand how these things work before you can get either too critical or too reliant on them. Because you don't want to accuse it of not working properly when it might be working properly, and you don't want to accuse it of working too good when it ain't actually working that day. So lasers are finicky just like anything else.
Also, it's got the Easy Zero instructions, including
that was very helpful. Yep.
Using the parallel mounted visible laser.
Yep.
And she weighs 18.2 ounces with the batteries.
Yep.
And dimensions are 5.80 by 2.96 by 2.3 inches.
Yep. So it's it's a unit that takes up a little bit of space. It does increase to the footprint of the rifle. So what I wanted to do with the testing of this unit to verify its actual max range capability was to test it in a variety of lighting conditions. That's usually what determines how good your rangefinder is going to perform. What this rangefinder is emitting a light at the target. That light has to hit the target, reflect off of it, and then come back and be able to be picked up by a sensor. Okay. Now, if you've got bright sunlight, for example, when I first tested this, I had the sun low on the horizon. I was shooting to the west towards the sunset, and the sun was not in the scope per se, but it was definitely within 1 hour of angle, on the clock scale to the sunset, because I wanted to get a good following on how it performed. And what I found was at that angle, you got a light picking up in the sun directly into the sensors here. And it was having a hell of a time picking it up. So beyond 700 or 800, you couldn't get much farther than that. So keep advised, these are going to vary in performance. You're not always going to get a reliable 1760 out of them. That's how lasers work. And that's not just this unit. That's any laser rangefinder unit. Now, some have a lot more power and have some different style lasers, and some of them are a lot more reliable than others. But you're going to pay for that. If you want Vectronics, especially the new models, you're going to pay as much as you would for a nice motorcycle, okay? And if you get one of the old Terrapins, those are $2,000, and that's entry market, tactical, serious style lasers. And even those, you got to understand how a laser works, how a rangefinder works. And so, shooting towards the sun, the reflectivity might have been okay because the backlit of the hills are a little bit dark. But coming back into the thing here, this was they had a lot of light in here from the setting sun, and so it couldn't pick it up. So 700-800, sometimes it's having a hard time reading anything beyond 600, and we're talking about highly what I would normally consider in God's country type situation out in the bush, like a hillside a bare hillside to be a relatively average target. You know what I mean? It's not like you're shooting at some goofy grass or something that's not going to reflect properly. I was shooting at I was laser beaming some large mammals that were wandering around out in the field out there. And at 600, as the sun was getting low and I was pointing towards the sun, even there, you had to click it 1 or 2 times, and you had to be right on with the crosshairs to get it to pick up a reading. Now, when I went 90 degrees off of the sun, when I was pointing south, for example, so I was shooting directly to the left, sun in front of me, and I changed position, and I'm shooting to the left. All of a sudden, the sun was not picking up in the sensor, and the hillside wasn't over illuminated, and I was able to read out over 1,200 meters. And so then you got a decent range on this thing. And I couldn't pick stuff up at 2,000 in those lighting conditions, but it is hard in the hills. You only got a couple choices for targets. You can't get every range increment. But then I did 180 degrees from the sun, and he ran into another problem, which was not this getting all washed out by the sun, the actual receiver of this, or the sensors, but it was actually I was shooting the laser beam opposite of the sun. The sun was directly reflecting off the bank behind me because the sun was low in the sky, and then the target might be plenty reflective, but it's reflecting all the sun's light. So the sensor couldn't distinguish maybe which one of them light photons was from this deal. You know what I mean? So very contingent on lighting, the performance of these things. Very contingent upon lighting, the performance, yes. And speaking backwards, I'm sorry.
But I bet during sunset or sunrise, those twilight hours, low light, that thing would get out there.
Absolutely. I think, after the sun sets, and that's not a factor, all of a sudden you got a really long range. So that's nice. A lot of times in hunting situations, that's when a lot of the critters are active. So that's very useful. But just keep in mind that on a bright day, it was a very bright sunny day that day, I wanted to go out in less than ideal conditions to verify how this thing performs. I've used a lot of lasers in my day, and I thought I wanted to do comparative analysis against those. And in general, guys, if you watch, again, the laser range finding review I did, I say as a general rule of thumb, whatever their advertised max effective range is, effective range, not maximum range, you take that number and you cut it in half, and that's basically what you can rely on, even in the normal conditions or the crappy conditions. And in really crappy conditions, you might just totally take it off the table and it ain't going to even work, So just be advised. If it says a mile, count on half a mile. That's a reasonable deal. And that goes for any good brand name laser rangefinders. That's just a fact. That's just how that deal rolls. They're going to want to advertise the biggest number they can, right? There's been a few outfits that do a better job with a more honest advertising. But that's just the reality. But for long range precision shooting, where determining the range to the target is super important. You want to have that confidence that what you're pointing at is what you're actually pointing at. You know what I mean? And so one of the major disadvantages to a unit like this is that it's attached to a giant heavy item, the rifle. And so you can't just willy-nilly range everything around you. And so it makes it difficult, to do that. However, that's also one of the best things about this, is that it's attached to a giant heavy object. Because that giant heavy object called the rifle is going to stabilize this. Now this thing is attached to a giant thing that has a bipod. It has tool support. It's basically like a vise sitting on the ground. It's not wiggling. You've got a high-powered optic that you can pinpoint exactly what you're aiming at. You can pick out a particular object, and you can get dead steady on it and get up a real reliable reading. And that's another thing to getting a reliable reading as well, is not having it dance all over the place. If you're just holding a handheld device willy-nilly just standing there, and you're wiggling just a tiny bit, downrange that might be 20, 30 feet. And so your range, and the computer's not going to spit out a good number at you. It might just say error, couldn't get it. So if you're steady and you allow it more time to actually hit the same object, you're going to get a more reliable reading sometimes.
And you throw in that remote key fob thing with that?
Yes, definitely use that part.
And you don't even have to move from behind the scope the whole time.
So you can stay on the scope, you hit this button, all you have to do is glance over with your eyeballs, you can see the distance, and you can instantly look up your firing solution. Now, a lot of people ask the question like, hey, why don't they have ballistics in there? Oh, it doesn't even have ballistics in it. Trust me, guys. You don't want a computer to do your ballistics, especially a range-finding computer. There's so much going on with ballistics that this thing is not going to be able to tell you. And that goes for any computer device. They're very handy tools, and I do like to use them, and I do recommend people get them. However, it's not a replacement for your brain, and it's definitely not a replacement for observation. There's a lot of stuff. It's not going to count for temperature-induced muzzle velocity variation, for example, atmospheric conditions, a lot of stuff like that. You don't want just a computer to spit out raw numbers, because at long range, if you're doing precision shooting, you got to do a lot of atmospheric adjustments and everything else. So even if you had a Kestrel theoretically built into this, with the Horus software, the accuracy first software, where it was picking up your direction of fire, it was picking up the wind, everything else like that, you still got to verify all those numbers with how you understand the ballistics work. Yes, because there's more stuff going on than even what a Kestrel accounts for. And there's bore conditions that vary. There's ammunition conditions that vary. Your muzzle velocity changes with different conditions and bore conditions. That's going to affect your trajectory huge. So I actually prefer one device at a time to do its job. I like the rangefinder just to give me the range. I don't want it to tell me about ballistics or none of that kind of business, because there's too many variables that you're going to have to adjust for. Then you can do your actual ballistic calculation on a separate deal that's dedicated to that. Mm-hmm. And And there's so much disagreement even amongst the experts which ballistic range finding or devices work better. And there's so many different personal preferences on user interfaces and stuff that I think it would be a silly move if they would put one of these in here, because it'd be hard to accommodate everybody and their needs.
Oh, yeah.
What one guy might have work for him, for me, is probably not going to work because I have a certain deal I'm trying to accomplish. For example, on this rifle is designed to shoot like 2,000 meters, right? And it definitely can get there. I'm going to have to do my firing solution methodology quite a bit different than what a lot of other folks are going to have to do. I'm going to have to take a lot of things into account that they would not have to do, and I don't want, it's not a one-size-fits-all deal is the point of what I'm saying. So I don't have any problem with the rangefinder just being a rangefinder, because I prefer to micromanage my ballistics and custom tailor them to my specifications.
You don't need a rangefinder that's going to give you your horoscope, too.
Yeah, right? What's my birthday? This thing ain't Siri, guys. And if it was, I would be scared. So, actually, in all honesty, man, it's pretty cool. It's definitely a piece of specialized kit. I think that if you have a dedicated extreme long-range rifle, this is going to be pretty handy because, you have to have a laser to verify. You need multiple modes of verification for your distance. So overall on this thing, guys, I actually think this is pretty cool. For extreme long-range precision shooting applications on a specialized rifle like we got here, if that's what you're doing, you want your laser attached to the rifle. That's my opinion, because you want it dead steady. You want to actually get the range. You're very, very dependent that your range is going to be proper, that you're actually shooting at the target you're trying to shoot at. And you can have your spotter back you up with his handheld device. You want to double check with the analog methods or all the other methods we talk about in our how to range a target videos. But this is definitely a field expedient way that a shooter can also verify the range to the target. And if not, if you got a solo shooter especially, then you really kind of need something like that, because it's very difficult to juggle all that equipment, and it's even more difficult to get a handheld rangefinder steady enough to really point at what you want it to point at. So I think it's a cool piece of kit. That max range of 3,500 maybe would work in an urban environment in low light. If you got a big white painted building with this perfectly pointed back at you, you could probably get a reading out that far. But for out in the bush applications, out in the hills, that's going to be a lot harder to get reflectivity off those style of targets. Obviously, automobiles, steel targets, things like that are going to have a lot better reflectivity. But I wanted to test it for field conditions, for like what hunters would use, or like a combat shooter would use out in the bush, to verify just natural, the natural setting of things when he's developing his TRPs or firing table, or TRPs or range cards and things like that. So I think that that's a pretty cool piece of kit for that application for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is made by SilencerCo, right?
SilencerCo Weapons Technology, or some branch of SilencerCo. It says in the beginning of that book. But I like SilencerCo. I think they're a cool company. Even like Donald or Eric Trump Jr. went in there, one of the Trump kids went in there and interviewed all the SilencerCo people, and they seem like they're real straight shooting guys. I do like them. They're patriots, and so I'd support that company. I think that they're cool. It's actually built like a tank. It's more heavy duty than most laser rangefinders, which are made in China that have the plastic housing. This sucker's heavy duty. And if you follow the instructions like I just said, and you make sure you wiggle it when you're mounting it, you get it properly settled in, and you get everything parallel, and you took the time to properly do that, you're going to have a pretty reliable unit, I think.
Yes, sir.
And so, yeah. There's also a sale going on, too. I heard if you're watching this, like right now, it just started by the time I upload this video. I just got an email from Optics Planet, and they're going to have these on, like, stupid sale. So I don't know I think the normal price, like when I got mine, it was around $900. And like if you're going to get one, take advantage of the sale, because it's supposed to be kind of a clearance deal or something. So really neat piece of kit, man. Definitely check it out and give it a consideration.
And also use Rex's coupon if you're buying from
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. I secure coupons for my viewers. So if you're checking this out, use the coupon. It's in the links in the commentaries and in the description. Make sure you get that. It'll give you 5% off your order. Plus, it'll take you to the exact place where you can get this for the super mega sale deal or whatever they got going on.
It's a blowout sale.
Yeah, they always got different sales going on. But it's neat when it's on something that you're actually looking for.
Right.
Like, oh, I actually want that. And it's like way cheaper than you would have spent. You could spend that money on ammo or training or something like that.
Or training? Now, where would one go about finding a good trainer?
Actually, dude, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be really good training. It's going to be like, I can't think of any better rifle training. You guys are going to dig this.
Actually.
No, I mean, like, we got the proper expertise, and we're going to make sure that it's communicated. That's a trick to really teach in anything, is being able to effectively communicate what's important, what's not, how to tie things together. Dynamic concepts. You can just regurgitate information, throw the math out there and do stuff like that. But in order to really get it to where it's employable effectively in the field, you got to be able to communicate it effectively. You know what I mean?
Understanding, comprehension.
It's got to be a seamless download of information so that when the guy goes out there, he's not worried about some trivial detail. He's actually putting together an effective, streamlined process that's going to get him on target and not worried about the peripherals. So that's what the solid gold is really going to be in the seminars and in the live fire. We're going to get you hitting targets out beyond 1,000 pretty easy. You're going to think, holy smokes, that saved me like 20 years of shooting. That's expensive. 20 years of shooting and buying 10 different rifles and 50 scopes, buying all the wrong stuff and shooting tens of thousands of rounds and going through barrels and thinking that your mounts don't work when they probably did because you weren't aware of this other thing that occurs within the system or externally. So there's a million things that the collective observation of experienced shooters are going to be like solid gold. And I was lucky enough when I started in this deal, some of the best guys around took me under their wing and trained me up because that was what they're supposed to do. And so I got to learn pretty good. And if you don't have the opportunity of having someone take you under their wing, we will do it. So come check us out. We did. We
got big wings, Rex.
Yeah, we got the big wings. And we got a new class that we were able to do in Dallas. There's a lot of people who didn't make it in the door. So check out the link for that too.
Yes,
and we would love to see you down there. And we're also going to have a lot of fun. Also, anyone who is taking the classes, if you take one of these RX-17 classes, you automatically get $300 off any live fire training event in the future, which is a pretty good deal. And also, I have like big dreams one day. And there's going to be class reunions, there's going to maybe be a party or something down the road where anyone who has alumni of the class, we're going to get together and we're going to have fun. And it's going to be a good time. And so we hope to see any of you there who can make it. And it also does help support the operation after, 8 years or whatever it is, producing videos for basically free, and spending like all of the money, spare money, instead of going on vacation with the wife when we want to, or whatever, you want to do this other stuff in life. It's all on like equipment. Like I'm buying scopes to review so everyone we can share the information because it's fun. So it does help to fund the operation of Rex Reviews. And maybe I can even pay off some of my medical bills or something one of these days. That'd be nice. And I'd be like a free man again. I feel like I'm a slave. But I really appreciate all the help of you guys, signing up for the stuff. And we'll definitely get you some world-class training. It's going to be awesome. And you'll get to meet the crew. So
it's all a big community, and it's growing bigger and better every day. And it's all thanks to you guys.
And now is the time to get trained up, too, because ammo is cheap. It's available. Components and rifles and stuff. The industry right now is prime for catching up. Because there is another storm a brewing. I can guarantee it. This deal ain't just smooth sailing forever. Never. When you're in the middle of the ocean and you're riding with King Odysseus, right? Just because it's calm right now doesn't mean it's always going to be calm. There's going to be a dragon over the next horizon or something. So it's always good to be well prepared. And this is the moments of opportunity where you can really get squared away.
Yes, sir.
And one guy with an effective rifle like this is going to be highly, highly formidable deterrent from any bad guys that would ever want to take over our beloved United States. So you got to do your citizen's duty, and you got to get very proficient with a firearm. Take any opportunity you can to accelerate your learning.
And who better to teach you than Professor Rex?
Professor Rex is the funnest of all professors, I promise.
And class is in session.
I'll even give you my unadulterated opinions on all different controversial equipment selection questions if you come to the class too. So, because that's one of the things, like, when a guy's actually, like, my tutorials have long been instructional in nature. It hasn't really been reviews of equipment so much. A lot of outfits, and there's nothing wrong with it, depend on reviews as their main kind of course on the menu. Mine have been more instructional in nature, so I'm trying to get people able to use whatever equipment it is they have properly. So although I'm reviewing equipment like we just did here, I'm not going to just tell you to go buy this because they're going to pay me $8 billion for whatever this thing is.
6 gold bars, I think.
Yeah, buy it, $19.99, buy now or whatever, right? We're trying to give you the instructional of how this thing works, so that if you do buy it, you know how to drive it. Because if you don't know how to drive it, it's going to suck. Just like this rifle. You can buy this rifle and basically not hit a basketball at 100 yards if you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's where the instructional portion comes in. But in all honesty, I can't really afford to give bad equipment selection advice. And although I'm tempted by some outfits that are very effective in their marketing to want to get everybody on board with their outfit, you know, like by maybe giving you some stuff or some other deals like that, I can't do that. I mean, I will gladly review items and endorse them if they work good, or if you can make it work good, or if it's easy to utilize. There's some cheap stuff that works good. There's some expensive stuff that works good. There's some expensive stuff that don't work good. And there's some cheap stuff that don't work good. A lot of cheap stuff that don't work good. So that's one deal. As a guy who's like going to be training guys, and as an instructional nature of the course, I can't tell you stuff that don't work, because then you're going to go out in the field and you're going to be like, this thing don't even go. And then I'm going to look like an idiot. So basically, I got to either like show you how to make something work that works, or, you know what I mean?
Or teach them how to think for themselves. And
yeah. Or get them zeroed in on the proper piece of kit. And I think this is a good piece of kit if you operate it properly, just like anything else in life.
Yes, sir. All
right, rock and roll, guys. Sign up for the training course if you haven't. Also, we got the free newsletter on www.rexreviews.org.
That's where the podcast is at.
That's where the free podcast is. Lou and myself and Miss Casey Day tear it up with all kinds of crazy guests. We have some really interesting stuff coming out very soon in the future. Definitely check out the podcast. It's going to be a glorious time. We have a lot of fun. We talk about everything. We talk about the Sasquatch, talk about rifle scope selection.
Aliens.
We talk about, spiritual stuff. It's just fun. And we're the funnest gun review channel there is.
Yeah, we
the
are.
other ones might be better in other ways, but we're the funnest, that's for sure, right?
They might be a little burlier and manlier and a little more tactical, but
or more organized.
Yeah, but we have the most fun. That is for sure.
We have the most fun, and we're the guys that have the real big buffet of awesome information and how to apply all the different little details into a usable system.
Yes, sir.
So do stay tuned, please. It's always good to have you guys here.
Thanks for being part of the Rex Reviews community, guys.
Yeah. Catch you later.
But she hits me, disassembles my leg. So I went to the doctor and he gave me a leg. Now she waits, slumber, just dreaming, baby. Hope that she kills instead of leaving with me. No, she's a minefield, she'll watch your body from the soul. Minefield, leave a big smoking hole. Minefield, please don't me over